For centuries there has been a thread running through prophecy, whispered by the faithful, and recorded in sacred traditions, that speaks of a time when the earth will be cloaked in 3 days and 3 nights of unbroken darkness. This is not some fanciful tale told to stir fear or to entertain imaginations. It is something much deeper, something that compels us to pay attention, because it has been repeated too many times across too many voices for us to simply dismiss. When the same testimony surfaces again and again throughout history, in different places, spoken by different people who never knew each other, we should pause and ask why. What is it pointing us toward? What is the lesson hidden inside the warning? The prophecy of darkness has always been tied to the idea of judgment and renewal. When darkness falls, it is never merely physical. It represents a moment when humanity is confronted with its own choices, its own brokenness, and its own fragility. Imagine a world that suddenly loses its most basic rhythm, the rising and setting of the sun. We have grown so used to that certainty that we no longer think of it as a miracle. We expect the morning to follow the night and the evening to cool the day. But what happens when the rhythm is broken? What happens when the light that always reassured you refuses to come? That is when the heart is tested. That is when fear begins to whisper. That is when every illusion of control crumbles. This is why the prophecy cannot be ignored. It's not just about 3 days on a calendar. It's about the unveiling of truth that can no longer be hidden. It's about exposing what lies beneath the surface when all distractions are stripped away. In that silence, in that suffocating stillness, there is a mirror held up to humanity. And in that mirror, we see ourselves for who we truly are, not who we pretend to be, not the masks we wear in front of others, but the raw soul either anchored in faith or swallowed by fear. Consider the generations before us who lived with far less than what we have today. They didn't have electricity or instant connections or the ability to turn night into day with a flick of a switch. And yet even they trembled at the thought of 3 nights without light. Now imagine us in this age of constant brightness, where the glow of a screen keeps us company at every hour. What will happen when all of it goes dark? When every device becomes useless, when every illusion of control is shattered, and all that remains is silence and shadow? The prophecy forces us to face that question. It is important to understand that this darkness has always been seen as a moment of separation, a time when those who cling to the shallow comforts of the world are distinguished from those whose roots run deep in faith. You see, light and darkness have always been more than physical realities. They are spiritual symbols. Light is truth, hope, salvation. Darkness is fear, rebellion, the absence of God. And yet in prophecy, the darkness comes not merely as punishment, but as a test. It is allowed for a reason. It is permitted for a season. And those who endure it with faith discover a strength they never knew they had. Now, some will laugh at this idea. Some will dismiss it as nothing more than superstition. But that has always been the response of the complacent. Noah's generation laughed until the rain began to fall. Egypt hardened its heart until the plagues could no longer be denied. The prophets were ridiculed until their words proved true. And so it will be again. The message of the 3 days of darkness is not meant to entertain or frighten. It is meant to awaken. It is meant to prepare. It is meant to strip away the illusion that life will always go on as it has, uninterrupted, predictable, safe. If the prophecy is true, and I believe there is more wisdom in heeding it than in ignoring it, then the darkness is not just coming to terrify, it is coming to expose, to humble, to shake what cannot last so that what is eternal may remain. It will be a time of silence unlike any other, when the voice you trusted most will not be the voice of the world, but the still small voice within. And in that moment, when you are cut off from everything else, you will discover whether you have truly built your life upon rock or upon sand. This is why I tell you, do not dismiss it. Do not shrug it off as though it has nothing to do with you. Because whether the prophecy is literal or symbolic, the truth it carries is unavoidable. Darkness is coming in one form or another. It may come as a global event. It may come as personal crisis. It may come as the sudden silence of your own world. when everything you depended on is stripped away. The question is not if the darkness will come. The question is, when it does, will you be ready? Darkness is never just about the absence of light. To reduce it to something physical is to miss the deeper reality it represents. The prophecy of 3 days and 3 nights of darkness reaches far beyond what the eyes can see. It stretches into the human spirit, into the landscape of the soul. That's why this message carries such weight. Because even if the sun were to shine every day without interruption, many people would still be walking through a kind of darkness they cannot explain. It is the darkness of fear, the darkness of confusion, the darkness of living without direction or hope. And when prophecy speaks of a time when the world will be wrapped in shadow, it is reminding us of the greater truth. Physical darkness is frightening, but spiritual darkness is devastating. Think about what darkness does. It disorients you. It steals your sense of direction. It makes you uncertain of every step you take. In complete darkness, even the familiar becomes threatening. The chair you've walked past 100 times suddenly becomes something you stumble over. The sound of your own breathing feels louder than ever. That's what fear does to the human heart. It magnifies what is small. It distorts what is harmless. It causes you to trip over things you would normally navigate with ease. And when the soul is covered in that kind of shadow, when faith has not taken root, it's easy to lose yourself in panic and despair. This is why the prophecy matters. It is not only pointing to an external event, it is pressing us to recognize an internal reality. Many are already living in the very darkness they dread, but they don't realize it because they've learned to dress it up with distractions. People bury themselves in business, entertainment, endless noise, convincing themselves they're in the light, when in truth, they're stumbling in shadows. And prophecy has a way of pulling back that curtain, confronting us with what we don't want to see. Spiritual darkness is also about separation. It's the distance between the soul and the source of life. When you are cut off from God, you may still breathe, you may still achieve, you may still look alive to the world, but inside you feel empty. That emptiness is the darkness. That knowing sense that nothing satisfies, that nothing lasts, that nothing is enough. That's the shadow of separation. And when the days of darkness are spoken of, they remind us of that eternal truth. Without light, nothing grows, nothing flourishes, nothing survives. The same is true of the soul. Without God's presence, we are left to grope blindly, stumbling from one failed pursuit to the next. But here's the paradox: darkness also reveals what we would never see in the light. It strips away illusions. It forces us to confront what is real. When the lights are on, you can be distracted by the glitter, the noise, the endless parade of false comforts. But when the lights go out, what's left? Only what cannot be shaken, only what truly matters. That's why this prophecy is not just a warning, it is an invitation. It is telling us, don't wait until the darkness comes to discover you were unprepared. Don't wait until the silence falls to realize you had no anchor. Instead, build now. Prepare now. Root yourself in what cannot be moved, so that when the world is swallowed in shadow, your soul still sees clearly. The spiritual meaning of darkness also speaks to testing. Every person, at some point in their life, will walk through nights when it feels as though heaven itself has gone silent. Prayers seem unanswered. The future feels uncertain. The way forward is hidden. And it is in those very moments that faith is either proven real or revealed as shallow. A borrowed faith will not hold in the dark. A half-hearted belief will collapse under the weight of silence. But a soul that has been grounded, a heart that has truly surrendered, will find that even in the deepest night there is still a light that cannot be extinguished. And so when we talk about 3 days and 3 nights of darkness, don't just picture the sun hidden from view. Picture the soul in its hour of trial. Picture the world stripped of its illusions, facing the reality of its own fragility. Picture yourself alone in silence, forced to answer the question, what is my life really built on? That is the spiritual meaning. It is not about frightening people into panic. It is about awakening them to the truth that every life is already living, either in the light of God's presence or in the shadow of separation. And so I say to you, do not dismiss this message as distant or irrelevant. Whether the days of darkness come to the whole world at once, or whether they come to you personally in the silence of your own trial, the question remains the same. When the lights go out, will your soul still see? Every great shaking in history has always been preceded by signs. They may not always be obvious at first, but when we look back, we can see them clearly. Warnings are never given in silence. They come like whispers before the thunder, like tremors before the earthquake, like the clouds gathering before the storm. And the prophecy of 3 days and nights of darkness is no different. It does not fall without preparation. It does not arrive without God leaving signals for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Look around at the world we live in. Chaos is not the exception anymore, it is the norm. Storms grow stronger, seasons grow stranger, nature itself seems unsettled. Earth groans as if it carries a weight too heavy to bear. Fires rage, floods overwhelm, earthquakes strike, and the very ground beneath our feet reminds us that it is not as stable as we pretend it to be. These are not random events. They are signs that the order we take for granted can be disrupted in an instant. And when creation itself begins to tremble, it should awaken us to the truth that something greater is stirring. But the signs are not just in nature, they are in society. Confusion has become the language of our time. What once was clear is now clouded. What once was certain is now questioned. Truth has become relative, and morality has been reshaped to fit human desire rather than divine design. People call good evil and evil good, and entire cultures are shifting on foundations that cannot last. When the moral compass spins out of control, darkness always follows. History testifies to this. Every great empire that rose to power eventually fell, not because of enemies at the gates, but because of corruption within. And what we see around us today is no different. It is the slow unraveling of a society that has turned its back on the light, and in that unraveling lies the sign of coming shadows. There are also personal signs, the whispers within our own lives. How many people today feel restless in their spirit, like something is not right? How many sense an unease they cannot explain, as though time is running short? That stirring inside is not to be ignored. It is the Spirit's way of drawing attention to what the eyes cannot yet see. When anxiety rises without cause, when hearts feel a weight they cannot define, it may be a sign that a greater shaking is on the horizon. These inner signals are often dismissed, yet they are just as real as the storms in the sky. You see, signs are never meant to paralyze us with fear. They are meant to wake us from complacency. Imagine driving toward a bridge that has collapsed ahead. If there were no warning signs, you would speed ahead without pause, only to face destruction. But if the signs are placed along the road, flashing, calling out, danger ahead, then you have the chance to change course. The prophecy of darkness comes with signs for this very reason, to turn our hearts, to shake our souls, to call us back before it is too late. Ignoring the signs is not wisdom, it is recklessness. And I will tell you this, the greatest sign of all is the hunger rising in people everywhere. Even as darkness spreads, there is a longing for truth, a yearning for light, a thirst for hope. It is no accident that in a world of noise, people are searching for stillness. In a world of confusion, people are craving clarity. That very hunger is a sign that the soul knows something is coming. Deep calls unto deep, and when the soul begins to stir with longing, it is proof that God is preparing hearts for what lies ahead. The 3 days and nights of darkness are not announced with fanfare. They are preceded by signs, signs in the earth, signs in society, signs in the human heart. And while the world may dismiss them, the wise will not. The wise will see the shaking as a call to prepare, the confusion as a call to cling to truth, the restlessness as a call to draw near to God. Because when the signs gather and the shadows fall, only those who have heeded the warnings will stand unshaken. Preparation has never been about scrambling at the last moment. Preparation is a posture of the heart, a way of living that begins long before the storm arrives. When we talk about the 3 days and nights of darkness, it's easy to let our minds run to practical measures. Candles, food, supplies, and all the things that give us a sense of control. And while there is nothing wrong with being wise and ready in a physical sense, that is not where the true preparation lies. Because when the world goes dark, no amount of stored up resources will carry you through if your soul is empty. What will keep you steady is not what you can hold in your hands, but what you have hidden in your heart. Think for a moment about what darkness does. It isolates you. It cuts you off from what you depend on. It strips away distractions and leaves you face to face with yourself. And if you are not prepared for that kind of silence, fear will overtake you. This is why the preparation must begin within. The question is not how many lamps you can light, but whether you have cultivated a faith that shines when every other light is gone. Have you built a relationship with God that sustains you in silence? Have you filled your heart with truth so that lies cannot consume you? Have you learned to walk by faith so that when your eyes cannot see, your soul still knows the way? Preparation looks like prayer that is consistent, not occasional. It looks like a heart that trusts even when circumstances don't make sense. It looks like a life anchored in the Word so deeply that when confusion sweeps across the earth, you are not tossed back and forth by every shifting voice. Preparation is not frantic, it is steady. It is daily surrender. It is choosing to plant yourself in the presence of God long before the night falls, so that when it does, you are already rooted in what cannot be moved. You see, there's a temptation to wait until signs grow louder, until warnings feel undeniable, before we take action. But that is not preparation, that is procrastination. When Noah was told to build the ark, he didn't wait until the clouds formed. He didn't wait until the first drops fell. He built when it seemed unnecessary, when the skies were clear, when everyone else thought he was foolish. That's the essence of preparation: obedience before urgency, faith before proof, action before the crisis. And that is what will set apart those who endure the darkness from those who are swallowed by it. Preparation also means detachment from the things that cannot save us. If our trust is in wealth, what happens when the systems collapse? If our trust is in people, what happens when they cannot be found? If our trust is in our own strength, what happens when it fails? Darkness exposes every false foundation. That is why preparation means shifting our trust now, transferring our confidence from what is temporary to what is eternal. It is loosening our grip on the fragile so we can hold fast to what will endure. And let me say this, preparation is not meant to fill us with fear. Quite the opposite. True preparation gives peace. When you are ready, you do not panic. When your soul is anchored, you do not tremble at every rumor. When your heart is guarded by faith, even in the blackest night, you can rest knowing that you are held by the one who never slumbers. That is the fruit of preparation. Not anxiety, but assurance. Not dread, but confidence. There will be some who laugh at the idea of preparing for what they cannot see. They will say it's unnecessary, that life will go on as it always has. But wisdom sees differently. Wisdom understands that life can change in a moment, that the world can turn upside down in the blink of an eye. Preparation does not make you paranoid, it makes you steady. It does not make you fearful, it makes you faithful. So let the world chase after comfort and distraction. Let others mock what they do not understand. As for you, prepare your soul, root yourself in truth, build your life on what cannot be shaken. Because when the 3 days and nights of darkness descend, the difference between fear and peace will not be what you have stored in your house. It will be what you have stored in your heart. Darkness, no matter how deep or overwhelming, has never had the final word. It may feel endless when you are in it, but history and prophecy both testify that it is always temporary. The human heart knows this instinctively. That's why people strain their eyes toward the horizon, searching for the first flicker of dawn. And when we talk about 3 days and nights of darkness, as terrifying as that image may be, we must also remember that at the end of it all, light returns. That is the truth woven into the prophecy. The darkness is real, but it is not forever. There is always light on the other side, and for those who endure, it is a light brighter than what came before. Think about what happens after a storm. The sky feels clearer, the air fresher, the ground renewed. Storms may leave damage behind, but they also wash away what was decaying. They break up hardened soil. They make way for new growth. In the same way, darkness strips away illusions, but it also prepares the way for clarity. It exposes what cannot stand, but it also makes room for what is eternal. The light that follows is not just the same light we once knew. It is light appreciated more deeply, embraced more fully, and cherished in a way it never was before the darkness came. And this is the paradox of the prophecy. As fearful as it sounds, hidden inside it is a message of hope. If the world must endure such a trial, then it is because something greater is coming on the other side. Darkness is not the end, it is the threshold. It is the passage between what was and what will be. Those who can hold steady in the silence, those who refuse to let fear consume them, will walk into a dawn more radiant than they imagine. This is why we cannot see the prophecy only through the lens of fear. If you stop at fear, you miss the very point of the message. The darkness is not allowed to destroy, but to purify. It comes to shake loose everything false, so that only what is unshakable remains. It comes to burn away the counterfeit, so that truth can shine more brightly. It comes to test faith, not to crush it, but to prove it real and to make it stronger. What emerges from the night is a faith that has been refined, a people who have been awakened, and a hope that is unbreakable. And isn't that what light does when it finally breaks through? It reveals, it restores. It reminds us that no night lasts forever. Even the darkest night has a limit. And when the first rays pierce the horizon, when the silence is broken by the song of a new morning, then every fear, every doubt, every tear of the night is put into perspective. That is why the message of the 3 days and nights of darkness is ultimately not despair, but hope. It is telling us, hold on, because the dawn is coming. Some of the most powerful moments in history have been born out of seasons of great darkness. Out of persecution came revival. Out of exile came restoration. Out of crucifixion came resurrection. And this is the rhythm God has woven into the story of humanity. Darkness may fall, but it cannot remain. Death may strike, but it cannot win. Shadows may cover the earth, but they cannot extinguish the light. The light always returns, and when it does, it proves that it was stronger all along. So when you think about the 3 days and nights of darkness, do not let your heart sink in dread. Instead, let it rise in expectation, because if such a trial comes, then so too will the dawn that follows. And for those who walk by faith, that dawn will not merely be the return of ordinary light. It will be the unveiling of something greater. It will be the moment when God's plan shines brighter than every fear, when His presence overwhelms every shadow, when His light proves greater than every darkness. The testimony of the prophecy is not only that darkness is coming, but that light is greater. And when you hold on to that truth, when you anchor yourself in that hope, then even in the deepest night your heart can rest. Because you know with absolute certainty the darkness will pass and the light will come.